Okay, awesome. Well, I'm actually going to go ahead and hand over the presentation to you. Everyone, if you don't know Chris, this is Chris Weiser. He's going to be talking about kind of the sales tips, marketing tricks as we go along, and kind of what are the common mistakes that MSPs make in either growing their business, scaling their business, starting their business, kind of the common sales and marketing mistakes and tips and tricks that everyone kind of tends to lose track of along the way. So, Chris, I'll go ahead and hand it off to you.
Okay. Yeah. Give me controls if you can too.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Do you want me to share my screen or you want to share yours? Because you
Yeah,
already got
why don't you just go ahead and share your
Okay, cool.
screen and then
That
we'll
is
go from
that
there.
is no problem.
Thanks for bearing with us, guys. Always the fun tech tricks.
Yeah. Okay. You see my screen okay?
Yep, we got it.
Okay. Perfect. Awesome. Okay. So, one of the things that I want you guys to think about, first of all, and it's very interesting because I just came off of a call with a vendor, an MSP vendor, and they were talking about how the MSP landscape is evolving and all the different things that are happening in this marketplace. And what's really interesting to us, and Robin, I'm not sure how much you see this, but we see MSPs that are coming in. We talk with probably about 100 a month across our program that are new MSPs that we haven't touched on. And it's very apparent they are still selling exactly the same way that they were selling 2, 5, 10, some even 20 years ago. They're selling usually the good, better, best model along with a per seat or per device type of sales model. And something that goes along with that is thinking about, and I want you guys just to think about this as we build all this, because it's really important. The days of selling that way are pretty much over. Now, if you want to sell your clients specifically that, and that's your decision, that's one thing, but you have the ability now to get far more money. And the vendor I just came, it was funny because they didn't know that we teach this. They were coming in, they're like, well, there's so much more money on the table, blah, blah, blah. And it's all risk based and all these different things. Absolutely 100% that is the case. So keep your mind open. Also, pay attention to little things we have here and think about how important adding cybersecurity, adding cloud-based systems, all these things. And I know I totally understand, like with Uplevel, you guys are an IaaS vendor. We've been selling that. I sold my first IaaS deal. Robin, you and I talked about this. Robin and I actually happen to live in the same town, so it's really pretty cool.
We live about 3 blocks from each other, give or take.
Yeah, not far at all.
Yeah.
So we're in this world where I sold my first IaaS deal in 2010, first cloud IaaS deal ever in 2010. Well, so much has evolved since then because even then I was talking about per seat and per server and how many RDS licenses there were and all these different variables that go along with it. But now what we're seeing is a risk-based measure, and cloud really helps you reduce that risk along with all your cybersecurity services. So we're gonna, just keep that in mind as we go through. And I'm gonna go through some of these different things. First of all, I'll do a quick little intro on myself. My name's Chris Weiser. I'm the CEO founder of Seven Figure MSP. And you hear, and maybe you're in my big Facebook group, we talk about the term Seven Figure MSP. That's the name of our brand. But it's really important to think about yourself. Are you truly a 7-figure MSP? Not necessarily only do you make 7 figures per year, but are you a 7-figure recurring revenue business? That's 83,000 a month of recurring is your baseline number on that. Or are you adding 7 figures every year? You have to have systems, processes, all these things that Robin and I talk about all the time. We're both kind of like marketing minded people. All that stuff's really critical to try and grow your MSP. And just to give you an idea of some of my background, I'm from Milwaukee. I know that I live in Austin, Texas right now, but I'm from Milwaukee. I built an MSP. I was a one-person shop, one-person residential computer shop back in 2000 that I started. Added some singular wireless stores, sold that all off and converted over into MSP in 2004, grew that up and sold that MSP up in Milwaukee in 2015. And then my wife and I were like, we're done with winter, and we came down to Austin. So that's kind of the story how we got here. So I am in your world and I understand where you guys come from.
Yeah,
So,
like just to give Chris some more feather and gloat to his name. He has a ton of experience, not just in building his own MSP, but he now works with hundreds of other MSPs and learns from their mistakes, right? But teaches them what they're doing wrong so that he can actually go in and help MSPs correct a lot of the common mistakes that everyone's making. And we see this all the time in our partners, and we get sales and marketing questions easily every day. about what am I doing wrong, especially right now during COVID. So this is huge.
Yeah, and it's interesting, it's so cool that I came out of that previous vendor call into this one because they actually asked me what our landscape of our clients look like, because everything that they're seeing in the traditional MSP landscape is their clients have actually cut costs, MSPs are struggling. And across my clients, Robin, you and I haven't talked about this, we're seeing about a 200% growth average across 300 elite member clients in my elite coaching program. So something's different, right? What's the difference? Well, a lot of this is sales mindset, sales process, selling with a risk first approach. But let's talk about the sales process today, because that's really what we want to talk about. And cutting corners in the sales process is probably the biggest issue that I see across the board. MSPs walk into the door, they say, "What do you need, client?" The client says, "I only want this, this, and this." The MSP says, "Okay," and then hands them a rate sheet or a proposal. And what you have to start thinking about is you are a professional services, high level, high function company, person, whatever you are that way. You have to treat yourself that way. If you walked into the doctor and said, "Hey, my heart's feeling weird, but just give me a little pill," what would the doctor do? And I know it's kind of like different things, but it's the still same concept. You go into a lawyer and say, "Hey, I got a guy that's potentially thinking about suing me. I just want you to advise me for 1 hour." They'd be like, "No, get out of here." It has to be, they have to actually diagnose before they can prescribe and give you the right stuff. But why do MSPs allow this all to happen? For the most part, they don't have a sales process. They don't have a sales system. They surely are not focusing on things that they should be following. And they let the client dictate the path of sales, which means that they'll actually let the client dictate the path of support too. Because when you do it that way, your biggest objection is what usually? Cost, money. Hey, you're too expensive. Your per seat price is too high, or your per device price is so high.
Or we don't need that. That's not what yeah.
Exactly. Well, does the client, it's just like going to the doctor. Like the doctor says, "Hey, I want to put you on." Now, granted, the healthcare system screwy and all these other things. So take that and throw it out. But doctor says, "Hey, if I want to look at if I'm going to diagnose your heart, I surely have to give you an EKG." You're not going to say, "Oh no, I don't need that. Just give me a pill." Like, and even if you did do that, the doctor would say, like, "See ya, buddy. Like, we don't need your help." So it's really important that you develop a set stack of services and go in there and sell that stack of services, but not even sell it as a service. Go in there, assess the scenarios there. So you see the steps we have on our 7-figure MSP sales strategy on the screen below. So first of all, we qualify. Make sure, now this is one that MSPs are really struggle with traditionally. Make sure that they are a good fit for you. Not all clients are MSP level clients. We know that. But what happens is MSPs, because of the way that they've sold, are so desperate for money, desperate for a close, desperate for a deal, they take anything they can get, which turns into this whole scenario of letting the client dictate the path of support, letting client dictate the path of sales. All those things go together. So make sure you have what is your, "I'm not going to get out of bed for X amount of money" number. Most MSPs are, "I'll take anything I can get." I will tell you, my clients, it's a minimum of $1,000 a month. That's what our clients are at. So if it's a one-person shop, I'm not getting out of bed for less than $1,000 a month, period.
And I loved how you at the beginning said that so many MSPs actually are selling the same way 15 years ago as they are today.
Mm-hmm.
It's the comfort level, right? And this is really the reason why so many MSPs continue to sell this way, is because it's just always what they've done. And it's worked a little bit, but it doesn't allow for scaling, right? And certainly right now, when landscapes are transitioning and there's a lot of muddiness in the water at the moment as far as what corporate offices are going to need here in the future, this is the perfect time to reevaluate sales processes and how you're selling to clients.
It's literally the best time ever, including COVID, including the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic on election day. It's the best time ever to be an MSP, period. It really is, because your clients are being forced. Think about 5 years ago. Like, I did medical IT, I did attorney, lawyer IT, I did all these different verticals. At no point prior to now was the marketplace actually dictating that the client has to have you and holding the client accountable. Thank God for hackers. I mean, it sounds bad, but realistically, we all kind of thought that was going to happen when HIPAA hit. Like, remember, you guys remember when HIPAA and all that other stuff was happening? That's like probably 2008, 2009, somewhere back in there. I thought we were finally going to have something that actually is going to force the medical industry to actually care about IT. Well, it actually just made it even worse in reality because there was tons more red tape and doctors didn't care because the government doesn't do any enforcement. But now the hackers are actually doing the enforcement and forcing that to happen. Now, again, I'll go back to the sales process. That doesn't mean that everybody's a good fit. So make sure you pick out what's your get out of bed. I'm not going to get out of bed for any less than this number.
Mm-hmm.
That's
And,
really
and this
important.
is certainly forced, even hacking aside, right? Security aside for a second, this has really forced companies to reevaluate how they deal with IT, and they are leaning on MSPs hard for any sort of expert guidance. And this is really what MSPs are for, right? To be the expert that you pay as a small business, you pay monthly to have on staff without benefits, right? Otherwise, you would just hire an internal IT person.
Yeah, and you guys even have an advantage over internal IT now because they can't get the same services at a cybersecurity level that you can get. Like there's so many things, Uplevel is a great example of that. There's so many things that channel only partners that do not sell direct, huge advantage.
Yeah.
So make sure, first step in the sales process, make sure you qualify the candidate. And I'm never going to say turn somebody flat down. Well, I'll probably recommend that at times. But if you're struggling, if your business, but understand what you're signing up for. If you're going into a 3-person nonprofit and they're giving you an RFP, understand, unless you do it your way and change the process and change all these different things, how they going to make a decision on the RFP? It's going to be one factor, price. That's it. And it's going to be price shopped directly. So it's fine to do that, but understand what you're getting yourself into and make a decision according to that. And if you up your numbers, and I will promise you, you talk to I have 300 elite member clients. If you talk to any of them, they will tell you that the number creeps up when you believe it creeps up and when you set those boundaries. So that's really an important thing. Mm-hmm. Next step in the process is make sure you actually do discovery. Now, I'm not talking just your technical discovery. The technical discovery is important, critical. I'm not going to debate that. But it's even more important to ask the client about things that they've been struggling with. Actually ask pain-generating questions. Also ask specific questions geared towards eliminating objections. It's really important. Ask them what their decision-making process is. Ask them who the people they have to have in the room to say yes are. Maybe ask a budget question, depending on where you're at with your comfort in the system. But ask questions that help them and help you determine what the pain points are. And then next step in that, obviously do your technical discovery. That's really important. But include on top of that, and when I talk about the technical discovery, we're talking about the traditional network assessment that we've always done. So we got sales discovery, we got some technical discovery, but then you also want to add on top of that, doing an actual data risk discovery. How many of you are actually doing that? Maybe let's see a show of hands of our attendees right now. How many of you are actually doing full? I'm just opening my attendee window here. I think we got one show of hands. So out of everybody in the room right now, we got one hand up that's actually doing a true data risk discovery. Because what are the hackers after? How many hackers are walking into a client office and running out with laptops? I've seen that happen once in my life where it was a mortgage office. I got everything stolen, but that goes all the way back to like 2010. So understand the hackers want the data. What things are important to show the prospect? Show them how much data they have. Show them how much, think about the data that let's say a construction firm has versus the data a CPA firm has. Who's got more valuable data and what's valuable there? They have to see that. They have to understand the cost of this. They have to understand the risk factors. We also have to understand what their cost of being totally down would be. Like these are things that you need to talk about and ask questions on, and then make sure you show them this and put it in front of them on paper. That's something that we do as part of our sales process that we teach MSPs. But I will tell you, again, we see 50 to 100 MSPs every single month, literally one every month. They're not even doing it properly, but they're doing it a little bit. That's how serious this is and how open of a door this is. So as you go into your data risk assessment, then make sure that you build a true presentation, show them all these things. Now, and don't just show them, here's your report of your network assessment, here's all the stuff we found. Show them all of the different risk factors and put it in front of them. Make sure they understand. If you have an outage, you're going to be down. If you have a breach and ransomware scenarios, this is what you're potentially looking at in terms of potential lawsuits, credit monitoring, litigation issues, all these different factors. They have to understand that. And the thing we haven't even gotten into yet is, don't forget that your client's probably assuming you're doing all this anyway. Most MSP clients that they're sitting out on, they're sitting out there. If you're not having this conversation with them, they're assuming you're protecting them. I guarantee you, if you pick up the phone right now and ask your top client, hey, if I told you guys you had a breach today and you got a ransomware scenario, what would you do? And they'd be like, you tell me. You're my IT guy. What would I do?
Yeah,
but unless you're, go ahead.
When they start objecting about financial costs, right? There is no better argument to that than to say, here's what it would cost if we don't do this, right? And then later down the line, when you have to have other financial conversations or growing conversations or just any sort of transitioning with the customer, you have the underlying groundwork to then build on that, right? To keep them secured, number one, but number two, so that they understand this isn't just your risk as the MSP that you're taking on, because they assume that you're taking on the risk, right? But
well, and then the go ahead. I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
Oh, no, it's okay.
And then the bigger factor with this too is liability, and looking at it from who's liable for what. What does your MSA with that client look like? Do you even have an MSA? Would you believe that 50% of the MSPs that come into our interview calls that we taught, that 50 to 100, over 50% every single month have no client master service agreement? None.
That's
so
crazy.
Think about your own world and think about what that looks like, and then think about what kind of liabilities are in there that you're inheriting or potentially being assumed to cover because you haven't had that discussion. And then also think about, we've seen this happen I've seen 4 of these now in 2020. End user client gets breached, doesn't blame the MSP actually. They kind of assume it's okay. They file an insurance claim. Insurance claim gets paid out. All of a sudden, the insurance company from the client comes knocking on the door of the MSP asking, why weren't you covering this for them? Well, they only, we had a managed firewall. That's all they had. Yeah, but you knew better, right? Like, did you have a conversation? Did you sit down and have a conversation with your client? Deniability, gross negligence, all these things come into play. And it's not even, and most MSPs say, well, they'll never win that in court. Okay. But you know what insurance companies do? They sue you until you're on your knees.
Exactly.
Because they have much bigger pockets than you do. And that's what's happened. I've watched this happen 4 times this year.
Yeah, no, and we all know what it's like to even have to have those conversations, or the audits that can occur from any sort of compliance, right? Yep. It can easily put a small MSP, cripple them, at least for the short time, just given the time that it takes to deal with it, right? Financials aside, the amount of time that it takes to go through everything and walk through with an insurance company, here's everything we did. It's not a conversation that you even want to have to start.
Yeah. Well, and it surely, and this kind of goes into as how we're presenting all these different things. The question that we get from a lot of prospects and clients is, well, that's a hard conversation to have. I really don't want to sit there and have that conversation with my client about, I haven't been doing this for you. Okay. I understand it's a hard conversation. It's a harder one. The one that we were just talking about. You got breached. Or having a conversation, or having your attorney have a conversation with that insurance company's counsel. Like, those are not fun things to have. And coming out of this, let's not even forget the fact that we are going after additional money. We've done this process going into, so all of our elite clients that join our program, they come in, and one of the biggest things that we do is we have them go back to their existing clients first. And we help them hone their skills with this exact sales process that I'm showing you guys. And I know it's kind of vague because it's only 5 steps on there. Can't kind of give away the farm on a 45-minute webinar. But the point is, we have them go hone their craft on their existing clients. So they go back to their existing clients, have this conversation with them, and we're accomplishing 3 or 4 things by doing this. Number 1, we're hopefully getting them to upgrade. We're stating out loud, hey, the landscape's changed. Do we all agree, just between friends here on this webinar, do we all agree that the landscape is different even today than it was 2 months ago? There's more threats, different threats.
And now's the perfect time, right? This is the time to start having these conversations with existing clients. Yep. Because it is changing. It is changing so fast.
Every single day. So we can go back into them and say, look, The landscape's changing. In order for me to protect you properly, I have to put different tools in. I have to put different, and that's true. None of that's a lie, right? So we go in, look at the sales process we have on the screen. We go in and do the same exact sales process we have on the screen, show the client, here's all the risk I found. Here's all the stuff I have. How do you want to manage it? Do you want me to manage it for you? What do you want to do? And there's the occasional client that's gonna be like, look, if I get hacked, I'll just shut down. Okay, here's what I'm gonna do then. I'm gonna hand you a letter that says, my get out of jail free card, sign me off. You told me you don't want to upgrade. I had this conversation with you. Maybe it doesn't hold up in court, but it's surely a arrow in the quiver, right? It's a good thing to have. So thing one is to potentially upgrade your client, having that conversation. Thing number two, protecting yourself from liability. That's the things we just talked about. Making sure that's out there and you've had that kind of discussion with them, because insurance companies and the law is now pointing towards, you are the IT industry expert, just like the doctor, right? You are the IT expert. You know that your managed firewall and endpoint basic antivirus won't protect your client. Do you agree with that? There's none of us that can say, no, they're fully protected. No, unless we're putting full services in with everything, and even with that, we can't stop most stuff. So you have to have that conversation with them and actually get your prospect to understand. And if they don't have that come to Jesus moment, now it's your job to present that come to Jesus moment with them. If they don't have that come to Jesus moment, then you got to start making a decision. And the big objection that we get from MSPs is, well, I can't afford to lose any clients. Okay, I understand. In my client base, you heard me mention that we have 300 MSPs. We've had over 90% success rate going in and upgrading existing clients. The biggest factor is we're sitting down, we're going in there with a risk-based assessment, going in there with data and power and questions and the right things, and making the client make a choice. I'll let you where you're at. That's fine, but you're going to sign off on your liability, because I'm not going to be responsible for it if you won't let me protect you. Mm-hmm. It's that simple. So it's having those discussions, making sure it's all there in front of them, and then protecting yourself. And for the most part, you heard me say it's a 90% success rate. They're having really good success, and we're having conversations, and we're moving the needle up. And to give you an idea, Robin, I don't think we've ever talked about this. We have come into our interview process. We have new prospects do applications, and then when they fill out the application, we do an interview and discussion with them. We see the average per seat price that MSPs charge. And it doesn't matter what they all have, but the average per seat price is about $63 per month. That's what we see across the board. After they're in our program for 3 months, we see that over $275 per month, having these conversations, going out there and doing the work. So it does work. So bottom line, let's come back to what's on the slides. Make sure that you follow a sales process. If you guys need help with this, that's what we do. But absolutely, you can do this on your own. Qualify with your discovery questions. Discover pain. Also discover all your network technical discovery. Also do your data risk discovery. Then properly present. Do not just email proposals over. Properly present. You can absolutely do this over a Zoom call without question. There's no issues with that. You can also do this in person traditionally. But then give them an actual e-proposal that they can truly sign. And it turns it into a real sales process that you have. Those are all really important things to have. So we just kind of talked about that. We also talked about the why behind the data risk assessments, but then make sure the pieces of the data risk assessment have these things. And I want to specify this and talk about this a little bit deeper. Robin, do you have any questions on what I just went through or anything?
I don't have any, but let's go ahead and, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to.
Yeah, fire away. And this is a discussion amongst friends. Absolutely. So make sure, and also this isn't the only 3 things, but I would put at least these 3 things in your data risk assessment. I would do a true dark web scan on your client. Now, this is going to give you more info than anything, and it's kind of to show them that, look, you've already been semi-breached. Here's already stuff that's out there, and this goes and it's just an ammo thing is all this is. But then make sure that you truly look at that data, and then make sure that you also so with looking at the data, make sure that you actually have a tool that goes in and looks at all these back end things. There's multiple of them out there, but make sure it's looking at your PII, your PCI data, all of the things that hackers actually want, that critical data that is considered what's valuable to the hacking or insurance community. And then make sure, this is probably the most critical piece in that come to Jesus moment, make sure you do some type of a fake fish. Fake fish is critical. It's much easier to do with your existing clients, right? Much easier to do because you already have access to everything. And we get a lot of objections that are, oh, well, I'm doing my little sales discovery meeting and the client won't let me do this. You have to actually think about if you go to the doctor, I'll say this again, and you're like, hey, I want that heart stuff done. But you can't look at me, can't touch me, can't look at me. What's the doctor going to say? Sorry, there's another, sorry, buddy, peace out. That's what they're going to do. They're going to send you packing down the road because they can't deal with the liability, and they surely cannot prescribe if they can't diagnose. You have to be thinking of yourselves the same way. Why in the MSP community are we letting the client say, nope, I just want you to look at my stuff and tell me what it's worth. How much is it going to cost? What's your deciding factor going to be then? That's it, price. It's literally going to come down to price, and that's all it's going to be. So you have to be the one that says, look, I'm a professional. I do a professional service. I am going to analyze all this stuff, and I'm going to show it to you. The only way I can do this is by properly analyzing and properly assessing. You're either a fit or you're not. And this is where the power of no comes into play. You'd be surprised if you say no to prospects. We see, again, over a 90% success rate with existing clients, but we also see over a 70% success rate with new prospects going in and actually charging for assessments and saying no when they say you can't look. I don't want my existing MSP to know. We'll come back to us when you're ready because I need to analyze. Oh, but wait, like this, you'd be blown away at how that works, as opposed to letting that client object and you just following along. It's very, very important that you do this. That fake fish is literally the most important thing because we all know how many emails does it take to get clicked on for a prospect to get compromised. Robin, you know how many is it? It takes one, right? Exactly. You just hit it on the head. Everybody knows that, but you have to show them and understand. We do fake fishes across all of our existing clients, like with our MSP clients. They do fake fishes to their existing clients, is what I mean, and to their new prospects. Over a 50% click rate across the board. So over 50% of staff across thousands of endpoints.
And this is
all of my clients.
This is getting way worse. They are getting much more sophisticated, especially over COVID.
We all said, like, you guys, you know, I'm 43, so I kind of go back a little bit with you guys. Like when I started MSP Land, I was, you know, in my 20s, but we all laughed because it was the Nigerian prince with a house full of money that didn't know how to spell. We all sat there and said, shoot, when the hackers learn how to spell, we're in trouble. You know what they've done? They've learned how to spell, and they've gotten better and smarter and more sophisticated.
Oh,
and
spoofing email addresses.
It's crazy.
Yeah. What they're actually accomplishing. I had a really good friend. He's in a very, very, very different industry, where they spoofed his email address. They sent out an email asking for Amazon gift cards, and unfortunately, Amazon gift cards these days are good as cash.
Oh, they're like candy, right? Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, and as soon as they're gone, they're gone. There's no sort of backtracking to get an Amazon gift card back. And so, sure enough.
Yeah, and and it's not only that. It's, you know, we see so many people that are not, you know, you think about emails are one thing, but we haven't even talked about fake phishing text messages. Like my wife clicked on one a couple of weeks ago. There was a FedEx that went around, and I'm like, oh crap, now what? You know, because she clicked it. She's like, did you get a FedEx pack? I'm like, what are you talking? And she clicked on a text. So they're figuring out all this stuff, and it's creating compromises on all these different pieces. My point is, you have to be out in front of your prospect, showing them all these things and not letting them off the hook financially. And there's also some stigma around, and I don't know this one. I don't understand this one personally, but there's a stigma in the MSP community, and maybe it's across the board, but I see it definitely in the MSP community where MSPs are afraid to charge their client because they don't want to screw them over. But tell me what, I don't understand, you know, what's too expensive, because what I promise you is there's no insurance company that's going to be afraid to sue you when your prospect gets breached because they feel bad. Like it just doesn't, it doesn't happen. So you got to think about all those different things. You are assuming liability, and you need to walk in the door to these prospects and get them to either take responsibility for the liability or you should be upgrading them. Our clients are seeing over $300 a seat, some $400, $500 a seat and more, depending on the liability and the risk that they're managing.
Mm-hmm.
All comes down to, no longer are we managed service providers. We are risk mitigation experts. Those are real things that we have to talk about. And then as we grow into this, and I know there's objections across the board that we see. And it's one thing I want to tell you guys is so many objections throughout the sales process. And I'm not going to go through all this on this slide completely, but so many objections throughout the sales process can be eliminated before you get to the point of the objection actually happening. Great example of this, when somebody says, hey, you go through your whole dog and pony show, you get to the final signing table, and then the person you're talking to is like, I don't have so-and-so here. I have to bring them in. Why don't you just give me the presentation? And well, you realize you could have eliminated that objection all the way back in the very first call or the very first discovery meeting or wherever you're doing by saying, who's all required to make these decisions? Are you the sole person, or who else has to be part of that? Okay, I need to make sure that they're going to be at the decision-making meeting because what I have to show you is critical. It's one of the reasons that I tell people, if you're going to present an RFP, we've all done the RFP, right? The request for proposal to a nonprofit or a city or a state or whatever. We've all done that. But who do we usually present to in that scenario? Like a city administrator or some guy that's, executive director, et cetera, some girl, guy, whatever. But you know what actually works? Asking those questions in the beginning and then requesting to present in front of the board. Rarely do they say no, actually. It's funny, but it's changing the process and changing how the objection is handled by hitting it. So I'm not going to go through all these things, but think about how your MSP is handling objections. Is your sales process changing, and are you the one navigating the path, or is your client dictating the path? Very, very important things to think about, because if what I promise you, and again, you can do everything that we're talking about here on your own. You may not need coaching. You may be phenomenal at this, but what I promise you is if you dictate the path in anything, you'll usually get to your desired result. Let's just take dating. Let's just take dating, right? Like dating, if you dictate the path and say, this is what I want. I didn't mean to cut you off, Robin, but this is what I want and this is my goal. If you take that path, now as guys, we're not so lucky. I think women have a much more luck on that, but example.
I'm loving this analogy. Please keep going.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
What were you going to say? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I mean, so the most common objection that we hear as a vendor is price all the time. And my question is always, how are you positioning your value to help mitigate those objections from the start, right? So not just, are you with the right decision makers? Are you in the right room? All those things. But how do you actually justify your value proposition to customers? What are you doing to make sure that you're setting yourself up to mitigate those objections from the start rather than when they happen? Because
and so much of this is finding emotion points that you can tie back, especially if you're meeting with decision makers who happen to be owners. That's one of the values of risk sales, because you can tie this back. And I'll give you a great example of this. About 3 months ago, I don't know if you remember this, Robin, or if I told you this, but about 3-ish months ago, I think it was in July, actually. So like 4 months ago, mid-July, came home from a trip. The dogs were at the dog sitter. They came home, and I have a 9.5-year-old dog who was just, all of a sudden she started acting really weird, laid down, wouldn't get up, wouldn't eat. We took her to the vet, and vet's like, she's got a 6-inch tumor on her spleen. If you don't operate, she's going to die. It's $7,000. I'm like, okay, here's my credit card. Like, so it wasn't even a question. And I'm not saying anything about the money side of it. There wasn't even a hesitation because that was an emotional tie to me. Mm-hmm. And I understood the severity of it. They didn't beat around the bush. They didn't talk about it. They were like, here's what's going to happen. Boom. Okay. It's not the vet's fault. You're telling me what it is. He didn't beat around the bush. He didn't run from the question. He didn't run from the price. He wasn't afraid to charge me. He's like, here's what my price is. What do you want to do? You can do surgery now. You can take her somewhere else. You can put her down. What's your choice? I'm like, here's my credit card. Go. And she's running around the house now, totally fine. Like she's been recovered. She's 10 now. But my point is, when you tie, and this is why you do a sales process with sales discovery questions, with data discovery questions, with pain discovery questions, with risk discovery questions, along with systems that find those things, and then you present them in a systematized manner, you have that come to Jesus moment, like just like the vet had with me. Your dog's going to die if you don't buy. What do you want to do? Here. Like did I have $7,000 budgeted for my dog? Without question, I did not. I did not have that budgeted in any capacity, but I made that decision based on emotion. Way out of budget, but it happens.
And that really highlights the need for a process, right? Objections don't start at the end of the conversation. They start at the beginning and
all the way on touch point 1. They start.
Yeah. So you already know what your common objections are for me. Whether they're new, old, existing, they're usually the same 5 or 6, and we all hear them every day, all day. And if you don't start mitigating those from the very first touch point with the client and addressing head on, your value proposition and why this is successful and why you're taking care of their IT, right? Then all of a sudden those objections don't wait until the end. They get addressed right up front.
Yep, absolutely. And it's just so critical that you guys have this. So thinking about, you just mentioned the sales process and going through this, and I don't know that there's a single most important step, but making sure that you are finding out where your potential objections are early, eliminating them as you go, tying all of the data that you found towards emotional risk points, and then delivering that, selling to the pain you solve, not selling a product, not selling a service, not selling to support or any of these other things. You think about how you're selling now, you're probably selling, oh, I have Office 365 seats, or I have IaaS services, or I have this and that. But we're talking about commoditized pieces at that point. How are commodities purchased and decided on? Based on price. So if you're getting price objections, you are not showing value, and you're surely not selling to the pain you solve. And make sure that you are asking for the sale. Make sure that you're actually having a proposal there. You should already know what their decision-making process is. Like if you're doing all the things that we're talking about here, you should know what their decision-making process is. We should know how they actually come to the point of saying yes. And if you're dotting all of your I's and crossing all of your T's, you should be in that spot. But a lot of this is actually getting your prospect to see that come to Jesus moment. Your dog's going to die if you don't do surgery in the next 2 hours. What do you want to do? How do you want to deal with it? How do you want to manage your risk? How do you want to deal with all this?
My favorite quote is align the pain with the people that can solve it, right? So if the people who can solve it, i.e. the business owner or whoever the technical lead is at the company, if they aren't aware of the pain, or if they don't feel the pain, they won't be inclined to solve it. But if from the start you are presenting, you're doing your risk assessments, like Chris said, from the beginning, you're getting all of the data that you need, and then presenting a very thoughtful and accurate, right, presentation that aligns those pains with how you solve them, it is a no-brainer.
Yep, absolutely. So that's all the slides I got. I just wanted to kind of go through this stuff, give you guys some baseline. Want to also give you an opportunity to meet with me direct if any of you want to do that. Can I put my direct booking link in the chat? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'm putting this in the chat for you guys. You can just go there. It's a 15-minute introductory meeting, but I would love to meet with any of you if you guys have questions on this. And, the big part about this is making sure that you actually have a true sales process and a presentation. And if you're getting objections, specifically if you're getting price objections as you're selling, I think you kind of understand, based on what we just talked about for the last half hour, 40 minutes, that if you're getting price objections, you're not giving them that come to Jesus emotional moment they have to decide. You're also surely not showing risk. Are any of you showing? We talked to we had one hand raised that's actually doing data discovery out of all the people that we have in this webcast. So it's really important to think about that. And if you need help, take a look at what we do, book some time with me, and let's chat about it.
Yeah, so we'll send out that that link to everyone here afterwards, so that you can always go book time with Chris and get more information, and he'll actually look at your specific sales cycle and what you're doing wrong, not just
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one thing really quick, next week, Monday, IT Nation starts from ConnectWise, and we're doing a free session. So IT Nation is a free registration point. I'm also doing a free pre-day workshop on Monday at 10 a.m. Central Time. So don't hesitate to go to itnation.com. I think it's itnation.com, and it's itnation connect. And if you register and then look at the pre-day workshop events, I'm doing the one Monday. It's a 4-hour event exactly on all the details that we just talked about.
That's awesome. That's a fantastic thing to attend to.
Okay,
Awesome.
I'm good. If we have any questions, I can answer them now. Otherwise, I'm good to go.
Yeah, no, I think we're good to go. Thanks everyone for joining us. You know, we'll be giving out a $50 gift card to anyone that attended today, so look out for your email on that. We'll have a random drawing for that. Oh, it looks like we do have one question. Yes,
Okay.
we will send the link to the event as well in an email. So
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
awesome.
In fact, I can probably pull it up. Give me 1 second. I'll put it here in chat. I actually had it wide open here, so let me just throw it in the chat so you guys can see that right away. That's the direct link to the IT Nation registration page that's got like our stuff on it. So there you go.
Perfect. We'll send that out in an email to everyone as well. Okay, awesome. Well, thanks everyone for attending this afternoon. Everyone have a safe day today, and we'll talk to y'all later.
Okay. Thanks, Robin. We'll see you soon.
Bye, Chris.
Bye-bye.